So, hi, welcome to the channel. The recording has officially started. It's very nice to meet you, by the way. I actually
Very nice to meet you as well.
only just discovered you maybe last week. I think you popped up in my feed on Instagram, something. And I don't know, man. You got my attention. I saw something. I saw a spark, something special about these items
I
that you've
appreciate
been.
it a lot.
I wish that I had the words to describe it, but I wanted to go ahead and let you introduce yourself to the audience here whenever this video, of course, goes out. So, if you'd like to do so.
Awesome. So my name is Ian, and I'm an industrial designer, which, if you don't know, that is the kind of section of design that makes things that are made to be mass produced. So while
Fantastic.
we know stuff like drawing and CAD modeling and rendering, we also know production methods, prototyping. So pretty much everything you have around you that's made in a factory was first designed by an industrial designer.
That's awesome.
So I got into that kind of specifically knowing that I wanted to do toys. I'm a lifelong fan of action figures and toys. Um, it started with Bionicle when I was only 3 years old.
I think I
saw
was
one of the
I think I was going to
for
ask
the
you
rock.
about yes, some of your inspiration with the Bionicle sets as well. It's very evident and it's tasteful the way you've kind of worked it in there. I can see other inspiration too, of course, but I think Bionicle really shines through with a lot of your work. With as much as I see something like, Knight's Kingdom from Lego, if we stay in that universe, but even knowing that these are Knight-like figures, at least aesthetically, I think Bionicle is the thing that I see most. I'm biased though. So
Definitely. So there is a lot of that very intentionally in here. I can get more into the history of how this project came about and that a little going forward. Do you want me to get into that now?
absolutely. Literally the next question I had lined up was to introduce your products since you've introduced yourself.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna start by actually going back a bit.
Awesome.
Well, I'll start way back and say I've loved Bionicle my whole life.
Yeah.
I never really had. I know that it's very natural, and most people kind of, they were into it, kind of fell out of it.
A dark age.
It's been a long time since we've gotten anything new, and a lot of people, weren't really feeling the 2015, 2016 sets. But like for me, I never really fully fell out of it. It definitely kind of comes and goes how
Oh, absolutely.
into it I am.
Turns out being an adult comes with a lot of responsibilities.
It sure does. It really does. But yeah, I was 3 years old and I saw the commercials for the rock sheath. And I was immediately just taken by them, and I still have like those exact rock sheaths I had when I was 3. They're a little off camera, just over here on this shelf. And I stayed into it really throughout the entirety of Gen 1. I was it's interesting. I've always been lurking in the Bionicle fandom.
Yeah.
I've never really been
same.
posting.
Yeah.
So like I was, I saw the leaks of Gen 2 when those first came out after years of rumors. I was literally like refreshing lego.com when they did the recent Tahu Tua set.
I can absolutely relate to all of this. I had very spotty internet access back in 2014. I was in school, so we were out in the middle of nowhere, and our internet on campus and everything was very restrictive, but I remember just trying to go to like every source that I could in the, I don't know, maybe 15-20 minutes of time that I had to get on there, using an MP3 player I wasn't supposed to have on me, and just saving pictures and pulling as much as I could and speculating. I think that's a lot of the fun with this kind of stuff too, is speculating, kind of building your own narratives, which actually leads me into my next question too, because I see this world, these characters that you're creating, and it begs the question of what world they exist in. I don't want you to necessarily reveal too much. I think there's a lot of novelty in the mystery of it, but do you have a story that you're working on that you're developing for these characters, or a world they exist in? I feel like I got a hint of that. So
100%, there's a story, there's a world, and I have two ways that are in development of how to get that story across that I think both will resonate with Bionicle fans. One
fantastic.
being a novel of some kind, whether it's just released as a PDF or what. I grew up, I have a lot of memories of like my dad reading me the Bionicle novels. So those are super important to me, and I'd love to, as much as the figures are a tribute, I'd love to do kind of a tribute to Greg Farshity's work
absolutely
in writing the novels.
And I would I don't know who you follow online in the Bionicle community. I would absolutely steer your attention to actually another person I've interviewed, and I believe I mentioned to you, Porcoro Morgan, or Morgan Ryan Art. An absolutely lovely member of the community, by the way, and just a very talented artist, writer, storyteller, mockist, fantastic person in general. And I would really encourage you to, if not reach out, just to kind of check in on their work, because I think you could get a lot. I don't know your writing skills. I know mine are trash, so I'm projecting a bit. But you could get a lot of I almost want to say a secondary perspective, because I'm just gonna fan over here. Like I'm just gonna see this stuff and be like, I want this to be on the market, you know. But I think that what you're doing is unique and it's special, because I've seen a lot of creators out there who have built their own products, whether it be products on the market, but, you know, custom work. And I think there's something really lovely about it, but I don't know, again, I don't have the words to say just what it is about your style specifically. It's very classic, it's very straightforward, and it invokes some kind of, again, that mystery. That's really what I keep leaning back on. I did want to know, with your work, do you plan on these products being cross-compatible, for example? Because I think that would be a popular question with other leading toy companies like Lego, or like, you know, other toy companies that make, you know, custom buildable figures, etc.
So I'm going to kind of dance around
I understand
here. The ball joints and the clips are the same size as leading items on the market, so they are compatible with leading brands.
That's fantastic.
As well as the weapon peg is the same size as the studs on leading products.
Oh, interesting. So they're a little bit larger to scale than I had initially thought. That's fantastic.
They are pretty comparable with, they're kind of between a Toamata and a Nika build.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fantastic. Kind of I wanted to delve very deeply into like your Instagram posts, but at the same time, I didn't want to dive in too much. You know, I didn't want to spoil everything before myself. So I knew I'd seen a couple of pictures you'd taken, like in situ, in an environment. But I never really tried to analyze that environment, because I didn't want to know exactly how big are they, how small are they, what. I like the surprise, I guess. It's hard to chase it because I know you have the answers.
In that case, I'm sorry I told you the scale.
That's exactly what I wanted to know, though. I think that's what's lovely about it, is that there's so much room to, I don't want to say improve. I think what Lego does clearly works, but to express yourself even within that system. And I think there's kind of a beauty to that a lot of people don't see. There are many Lego fans out there who are hard onto not buying knockoffs, not buying off-brand things, but I want to sort of steer the conversation towards an appreciation for products like these, especially from smaller creators like yourself? I make the assumption it's just you working on this project, or do you have anybody else in the background?
Yeah.
Just you? Kind of.
So all the CAD modeling you see done, all the prototyping, all that stuff's me. Here I'll get a little more into, because there are some people I kind of want to credit. So I'll get a little more into. So okay, I'm studying at Appalachian State University. Well,
Oh,
I've graduated now. At this point, so I'm studying at Appalachian State University for a product design, industrial design degree. Um, and I realized that I have the opportunity to hopefully go to New York Toy Fair.
oh, fantastic.
It's it was only me and one other guy who's one of my best friends. His name's Andy, who were interested in doing toys out of 30 odd people doing industrial design my year. Um, so we kind of have to. Appalachian State's not the biggest school in the world.
Right, I
It's not the
understand.
most well-respected design school, despite how hardworking and how good our stuff is.
Mhm.
So to get into a place like Toy Fair as a student is not the easiest thing, but I was able to get
Oh,
me and Andy in, and we were able to go
congratulations.
last October. Well, thank you.
That's
So we went
fantastic.
last October, and it was super influential on both of us, getting to see all this stuff that's coming out. And the main thing I want to highlight, and why I'm telling you this, is the people I met that ended up shaping this.
Mhm.
One of them being a guy named Brandon Broswell, who runs his own independent toy line named 9 to 5 Warriors.
Oh, I'll have to look that
Um,
up.
if you're into if you're into retro inspired action figures,
Mhm.
he's definitely something you gotta look at. He also started on Kickstarter, and me and Andy both did an internship with him last winter, I mean.
Well, this is
Um,
fantastic.
thank you. And then so during that time, I got to develop a really interesting product for him that I still am kind of cagey about saying a lot about, because
Totally
he
understand.
hasn't fully revealed it,
Mhm.
but I do have I did get permission to like post it on my portfolio site. So if anyone watching this is a fan of 9 to 5 Warriors and kind of wants to go see that, you can go to my portfolio site. It's
Shout 'em out. Yeah.
lazyrobotsdesign.com. Um, so I did that internship with him, and I met a ton of other people, but the two really standouts is a guy named Matt, who is the creative director for a company called Premium DNA Toys.
Okay.
They just did a really great Banjo Kazooie figure
Oh,
that I have,
fantastic.
and
Yeah.
they do Battle Toads and Earthworm Jim, and they do a lot of stuff that's kind of in this era.
Yeah.
Um, and I also got to meet a guy named Aaron, who's one of the creative directors for Super 7, who is, a much bigger name in toys, Super 7. So flash forward again, couple months, it's my last semester. And so when you're studying industrial design and product design, you get used to, so every year we have a class called Studio, and that's kind of the main one that we're learning everything in.
Mhm.
And each class has one or two projects where we get a design brief, and it's like a piece of outdoor restaurant lighting or an item for this company. And we have 8 weeks where we develop a product for that to fit that design brief. So, like, the first week, it'll be bring in 12 sketches and then pick 3 of those and develop those 3 into 6 more sketches. And then we kind of just keep doing this development until we have this very well refined item at the end.
I like that
But
idea too. That's really good.
that's it works well. If you my advice I learned from studying product design is, if you want to make something that is creative and interesting, the best thing you can do is sit down and say, I'm gonna make 30 concepts of this. I'm
That's
gonna make 30 of these, and I don't care if 25 of them suck.
yep.
I don't care if they all suck. Um,
There's
I'm gonna make.
something, yeah, there's something about that physical process of getting it out of your brain and in front of you,
Mhm,
because there's only so much you can do in here anyway, as powerful as our brains are. And it reminds me of
exactly.
a bit of an anecdote that I often talk about, because one of my most pivotal moments as a mockist, a Lego designer, creator, whatever, not officially, of course, but was actually started because of an idea. I had seen old sets. You might be familiar with like the Puku and Takua set from 2003 as well, around the same time the Rockshi came out. And it was a neat,
Mhm,
lovely set. I never got as a kid, but it had this awesome walking function. Great desk toy, big though. So I was like, I want to make a
mhm,
crab. I want to make something like that. Crabs are popular, everybody loves them. And I want to make it crawl. I want to make it scuttle. But I want it to be small. I want it to be compact, easy to understand, and I went through design after design with all these different ideas about camshafts and these linkages that would collide and having like rubber bands or springs pulled in. And it turned out what ended up working for me, and I kind of have it nearby, so I might grab it once I pause talking, but was actually probably the most simple solution for the design. Just using the shape of specific gears themselves to collide with the legs, not drive the legs, but just to hit them and hit them up and down.
mhm.
And all I had to do was just time those gears. And since the gears are offset by 45 degrees, it just means when one leg's up, the other one's down because they're always opposite each other. A simple design that's modular, that's
Mhm.
small, and I go from this one design to like three other builds, completely different. Made a hummingbird, made a big centipede thing, all because I wanted to make a walking crab. And
Exactly.
I,
So yeah, that's where if you have kind of creative block, what I would say is just grab a pen and paper. I know you're if especially if you're used to drawing, you're probably used to using Procreate or
mhm,
some digital thing that's you kind of want it to be very refined. Do the opposite right now. Grab a sheet of paper, grab a pen, just start drawing possibilities, and you'll come up with a solution you never would have thought of if you sat down and you're like, everything I draw is going to be super refined and shaded and ready to present to a board.
mhm.
So
That's actually a fantastic piece of advice too. I like that little snippet of kind of getting out of your comfort zone you worked in there. Do something you're not familiar with, and then work through the idea. That's smart. I like that. So,
um so okay, capstone project. Our for our final semester, we get to dedicate a semester to doing really whatever we want. There's a few very pretty broad guidelines, like it needs to be a product.
yeah.
It needs to, we need sketches, CAD models, all the stuff we're used to, but it's very broad. So I immediately, having just come off of my internship with Brandon, doing retro inspired toy lines from his childhood, I'm like, there's all these retro inspired toy lines that I think are really cool. Knights of the Slice, 9 to 5 Warriors, The Worst, all this really great stuff. And there's yet to be retro inspired toy lines based on when I was a kid.
Mhm.
Um, so I was like, I'm gonna do it. And when I think about my childhood of toys, Bionicle's it. Bionicle is like the thing.
100%.
So
Yep.
so part of this very loose thing is that obviously our professor isn't going to be able to give the best advice to every student
Oh, right.
because it is going to be something that's kind of out there. So one of the requirements is that we find a mentor who does that, who is in that industry. We want to do our capstone in. So I I emailed Matt from Premium DNA and Aaron from Super 7. I emailed them both thinking, these are both creative directors. They're one
Yeah.
of probably neither of them are going to say yes. They actually both ended up being very interested in helping me with this project. So I ended up having two very fantastic mentors through this process. And then, kind of unexpectedly, I ended up talking to Brandon from my internship quite a bit during this process. Um, so all three of them were super influential. Matt and Aaron, I had weekly meetings that were like an hour long with both of these guys, that these professionals in this industry that are just donating their time to this school project.
I am
So,
jealous, so
well, yeah, so much thanks to them. And probably about halfway through this project, Matt, who is used to doing his own stuff, it's Premium DNA Toys. It anyone who knows this company doesn't know this. It is two guys. It is these two brothers, and they do everything. So they're used to kind of doing this on their own. And like halfway through, he's like, dude, you gotta do a Kickstarter.
yeah.
Um, and at the time I was kind of like, I want to have more experience in the industry before I go out on my own. Um, I Now the idea is that, this is going to be a side project. This doesn't take, when I'm doing three figures, this doesn't, it's not going to be a 40-hour a week job
Yeah, 100%.
running a company like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty simple. So, and the the more people I've talked within the toy industry, the more I understand, because I was worried that, I'd be interviewing for some company and they'd not like that I'm doing my own thing on the side. The more I talk to people, the more I see that that's not frowned upon, really, which
Yeah,
is what I was worried about. So
but I
I'm
get where you're
now
coming from.
developing this. Yeah. So I'm now developing this with the idea that, you know, first off, just full disclosure, the job market is freaking rough.
Isn't it great?
Um,
You don't
so
have to tell me.
I'm looking, yeah, so I'm looking for a full-time 9 to 5, day job doing this. And I'm not someone who does well when I don't have anything to work on.
That's very
Um,
relatable. Yep.
and filling out, you know, there's maybe there's like 20 applications a week in toy design to fill out. And other than that, I kind of didn't have anything. So that's when I started looking at this more as like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. So I asked I sent all the people who helped me with this, and I'm like, so what's the next step?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, contact a factory, and you send them the stuff, and you see it say how much to do this. Um, so I've done that. Um, and that's more or less where we're at now. One thing I forgot to mention that I meant to mention in that. So this project does exist in two forms,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm worried some people will get misled about what will be included, because this exists as Modieval Capstone School Project, and it exists as Modieval, the Kickstarter stuff that will hopefully be delivered to your door.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of similarities, and there's a few things that, like, I talk to the factory and I'm immediately like, okay, that's not financially possible to
Yeah,
do at this scale.
I understand. Mm-hmm.
The biggest one that I know, if you look, because Modieval the School Project is what's on my Lazy Robots Instagram, as
Mm-hmm.
well as my portfolio site, the canisters. I had canisters designed that I was really happy with. Here, I'm gonna grab one real quick.
Absolutely. Take all the
I
time you
have a
need.
few.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Welcome back.
idea behind the canister was that it is the facade of a castle. So one side has this door, one side kind of just has a wall, and each side has the clips, so that, and they would come with extras of these double
Double
ball
ball.
pieces. so you could combine them, and through the canisters you would have a
Your
castle playset,
yeah,
basically.
that's so fantastic. I love that.
I worked very hard on it, and I sent it to the factory for a quote, and it would probably make the whole project cost another $30,000.
Yeah.
And I'm already terrified about how much money I'm gonna have to get to
Yeah.
make this happen.
And I mean, that's the crazy thing too. I think there's I got a little bit of a delay here, or an echo, but what I wanted to say was I think there is a naivety, this applies to me too, because trying to even think about putting a project or a product on the market, rather, there's so much I don't know, and it in part inspires me to want to just go for it, to gun it, but at the same time, I'm very reserved because I know that whatever number I'd get quoted is nowhere in the ballpark near what's in my own head, because I'm not familiar with this stuff. But these are industries that have been around for decades, factories and distribution centers that know what they're doing. So it's like, it's tough because you want to bring a product like this to the market. You think, what can I run this at? But I think the main thing is that your passion really shows through. And that is inspirational, but it's also worth not underestimating the power that passion has for a community like the Bionicle community, or others. I know we're not the only ones, but just knowing that there are people out there that I would hope have the same kind of passion about this that you do, and the same kind of allure to a project like this that I have when I see it and I'm like, I want this on shelves, that want to back it, want to finance it. It's difficult. I wish that I had recommendations to make as for like pitching a product like this. You probably know far more about this stuff than I do. But I think
I was also surprised by how much it ended up costing. We can get more into, I can say how much I'm going to ask for the Kickstarter.
I would probably save that for when the Kickstarter launches, just because between now and then, I'm sure that there's going to be some mystery little thing that comes up. We're like, oh, we didn't account for this. But I expect it, to be 5 or 6 figures at least, and that's the reality of bringing a product to the market, unfortunately. It's so out of the reality for most people that, as ourselves, as a singular person, working on a project, it's hard to really fathom that. But as a company, they're full of dozens, hundreds of people that to them, $100,000 is still a lot of money, obviously, but they don't scoff at it. They just want it delivered. They want the product to be feasible and to be sellable, I guess. And that's one of the best aspects of something like Kickstarter or GoFundMe or Indiegogo or any of that kind of stuff out there. Just seeing the product.
What I will say, so I will dance around how much I'm going to be asking, but I think some people might find this interesting.
And,
so I'll go a little more into.
You're more than welcome to reveal whatever information you want to.
So one of the other big changes is that I had 7 different figures as school project, and then there's 3 as thing that is as Kickstarter. There's 4 if you count the repaint.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So when you're doing one of the things people, I don't know if people realize this or not, but when you go to a factory, you can't say I want 100 of this. You can't say I want 10 of this. You want like 1,000 is a really low minimum. It is it was hard to find a factory that would do 1,000.
Yeah.
Um, and it not only that, it was hard to find a reputable factory that would do 1,000 of each design. And because I'm doing a low order quantity, the per unit cost is pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
And so the tooling, which is far more expensive than I would have expected. So in general, what I will say is I for it to get made, what I'm asking, if we get just that amount, I'm not making any money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making a cent from this. I did include an amount into the goal that is kind of what you mentioned as like these things something might come up
Yeah.
and I need to drop a little extra. And if I don't have to drop a little extra, that's going to get moved on because I have a lot planned outside of just this. I have
Right.
a lot I'd like to do. So any of that kind of wiggle room money that doesn't get used is going to be moved on to the next project. But this is an expensive and hard to do process. I had to find a factory that works with companies to the degree that I know they're not just going to take my money and run.
Right. Yep.
Because at that point, like no one wins then, except for the factory, I guess.
Right.
Um, and was still willing because when you go to a factory that is used to working with Hasbro and Mattel, and you say, "Hey, I want 1,000 of this," they're like, "That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's not worth our time."
Or
And
they
I
charge
also
you an
needed a
insane
factory.
amount to make up for it.
Exactly. And I also uh, needed to find a factory that was able to have like the quality control to make like this snap work
The
every time.
proper tolerances.
And
And I think that's something that people don't give Lego a lot of credit for because not just
really
Lego either. Yeah. So many different companies that build like model kits that you can like put together. I'm blanking on a lot of names right now, unfortunately, but like Bandai and
Bandai
yeah.
is a big one. They do Gundam
And it's just the sheer tolerances of aspects like that. One thing I would consider, at least for like a first wave, would be something like creating sprue type items like the limbs on your characters, if they can be worked into a single mold, a single sprue. I think people would be happy to still buy those types of products. And I'm not saying to go down to the degree of detail as Bandai or other large manufacturers. I'm talking about creating the pieces like you have now, but in whatever aspects where a sprue makes sense, it might shave off a little bit of cost. And in some cases, part of that cost could even be related to extraneous parts or what have you for whatever future stories you might have or character plans you might have as well. But again, I have no idea. I wish Lego worked a little more with sprues, gave them a little more chance because I think they could really excel at it. But they know what they're doing.
I
So
think I think what keeps Lego away is the idea that, they want a 3-year-old to be able to not have to have snips and
yeah,
sand
100%.
the things
Mm-hmm.
down. Um, and I looked into that. I've looked into a lot of different stuff. I'm trying one of the most important things to me with this project because this is such a love letter to what I grew up with
Mm-hmm.
is I want to provide a comparable experience. I want to have it that hopefully in a year and a half or whatever, whenever these hopefully are in people's hands, for them to be able to open them, pour out all the pieces, and feel like you're 10 again, building these toys, have the snaps feel just as good, have everything work as seamlessly as possible. That's very important to me. So
And I
And
think,
that's,
go ahead.
you go ahead.
I was just gonna say,
I was just gonna say
right, the delay. Sorry,
the
I'll let you
delay,
go.
yeah. Um, I just my last note. So that's part of why, like, finding the right factory was so important to me, and I really think I did that. I'm excited to work with these people that I am working with at the factory. Every interaction I've had with them so far has been really positive, and they're very open to me. Like, one thing I'm working on now is kind of like add-on items, seeing what I can include, because I am asking for quite a bit. So,
Mhm.
if someone has more money to drop and they can grab little add-on items that will help the Kickstarter go through. So I'm looking at stuff like that and stretch goals. I do have one of these items I have planned as a reveal here. Um, so we can get into that whenever you want to, but
Oh, absolutely.
they're very open to me sending them this stuff to get quotes that might never come to fruition or come to fruition as a future project. The one thing I know for sure, okay, is that the first stretch goal is going to be the other two champion figures, because I want all five of them together. The first time when I was working on this as a school project and when I had them all prototyped and I had these five characters together for the first time, it felt like being a kid and you have the six Toa together. It felt really great to have these. They're cohesive. There's just enough differences that they work well, but they still feel like a great cohesive team. And I really hope I'm able to provide that on this project. If not, a lot of the tooling costs will be covered here, so that if I do a future crowdfunding, it will be a little less. It will be quite a bit less to get the other two figures. I know people are interested in the King character I've posted a few times.
Hmm.
Um, I have a few plans for him. He was originally envisioned to be a kind of build a figure where all five of the champions would come with a few of his parts.
Hmm.
I don't know how feasible that is at this scale. What I want to do with him, and I'm just gonna throw this out here, and if 5 years from now this comes to fruition, you guys heard it here first.
You heard it here
I
first.
want to do a freaking huge dragon, just like the size as the Cardass dragon, just huge, and have the king there, so you have this kind of battle pack of him fighting this just massive dragon. And I don't know, I can't even imagine how much what I'm envisioning this would cost if I'm doing like 1,000 or even like 3,000 of this.
Hmm.
It would probably be pretty cost prohibitive, but that's the dream. That's the dream for the king, is to have him come with a huge dragon.
Yeah, and hey, part of the ambition is just trying to shoot these thoughts to the moon, put your ideas out into the ether, and just let people say,
Mhm.
hey, this is the plan I got. This is the story I'm working with. Some things may change. Some characters might change. Maybe there's a few things to reveal in the future. But we know is that, as you mentioned, the tooling gets to be a little more accessible with more waves. The relationships between you and the companies you're working with also get to be more uh, open and established as time goes on too. And I think that's a really important thing. So
Once it becomes feasible for me to order like 3,000 of each thing, if that ever becomes feasible, as opposed to 1,000 or even 500, um, that will help a lot too. That will be able to make either the figures be a lot cheaper or make me able to do bigger, cooler stuff for the same price point. So
no, that's
that's
fantastic.
that's
I
where
love
I'm coming.
it. Well, we have talked a bit about what has kind of inspired your work. We've talked a little bit about, but not too much, not gotten too heavy into this story. I cannot say enough how much I admire not only your ambition and drive here, but also the little intricacies. I think when you said that you want people to kind of experience that little glimpse of childhood again. That is an important thing that a lot of people overlook. Partially, people overlook it because they treat this stuff like a business, which it is. That's the reality of this. But it is also a passion. And I think for a singular designer like yourself, for someone like me, the passion is what comes first today. You know, in the future, if a business springs up out of this, I'm all for it, man. You've got my support. But I will say, too, that you got a good head on your shoulders, you know? And
I appreciate it.
As I've mentioned, the attentiveness to the product, to the consistency, as you've mentioned, like knowing that you're in the self-production phase, if you will, the 3D printing phase, and already thinking about the tolerances, what these companies are able to do, and what you're able to do reasonably is admirable. It's impressive. So I'm very glad to see that. I did want to go ahead and, before we end things off here, I don't want you to reveal too much about the Kickstarter, as I mentioned, unless, of course, you're comfortable. If you've got any plans revealing anything specific about the Kickstarter. Did you want to mention around what time you're shooting for to launch the Kickstarter itself, though?
So the original plan was early August, maybe even like August 1st. That may be moving up. I'm a little it I maybe sooner. I'm waiting on, a couple more quotes from the factory.
Mm-hmm.
I need to like do everything on Kickstarter's site. I haven't even began that process. I have things written and photographs taken, but I'd say early August is a good um kind of thing. Before I have two things. So I have two things. One
Yeah.
that I forgot to mention. I got sidetracked. So I have two ideas of how the story is going to be told. One being the novel. Another um is a point and click adventure game, very similar to Monog.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to do that. I know I'm talking to someone who can do that. Um, so that's a possibility. That's a real possibility to at some point have a point and click adventure game that would hopefully be very wonderfully nostalgic for everyone. And yeah, so I do have one thing that will either be like a stretch goal, maybe a future item that I would love to show.
Absolutely.
So let me pull this up. So so these are the Ventarians. Uh, the idea behind them is that these would be very small add-on items that could go with each of your champions.
Oh, these are adorable. I love this.
They would have one of, these are very similar to a product I'm sure people are familiar with.
just a
They'd have
tad.
one of the, yeah, they'd have one of the same colors as the champion they kind of go with, and then another kind of complementary color that isn't used anywhere else. I would have them come with either the three masks, or if we get the other two champions unlocked, I'd have them come with all five masks in that color, so that not only are they customizable, but they're also
Collectible.
yeah, you can, if you are really into the Knights Guild and you want Jace to have these five squires for him to work with and protect, you can get five of them and they'll all have different masks. Here is a nice little look at how this is hopefully gonna look. That body piece is the only new tooling. So, and also that has another use in mind that I'm gonna keep close to the chest.
100%.
But maybe if these get out there and somebody uses the piece in that way before me, that would be really awesome. So yeah, this is either A stretch goal, maybe, depending on how. If I can just factor these into the main Kickstarter, that would be
Hmm.
great. And have them just be an add-on item people can grab. I would love to do that. And they're about half the size as a champion.
Yeah.
So,
And it's not worth overstating just how important the world building of customizable, just little guys like this. Obviously, some
mhm.
people can only afford so much, but also it's worth just the interaction. As I mentioned, the world building. There's something to be said about it. And I'm noticing here just how prevalent the ball jointed system that you have is. It's again tasteful, as I've mentioned, but seeing it in like the arms for the clip on armor on the back of the feet, which is something I noticed as well, is just
Mhm.
spectacular. I love it.
So one thing, I'm gonna go ahead and close this out.
Mhm.
There we go. One thing while I was designing this, and I don't want to say improvement, but it's one thing that I did set out to do to kind of change this system,
Mhm.
is that everything except for the weapons connects with the same ball and socket. So even here, let me grab this guy here. Even our lovely Kickstarter exclusive, his mask, all the masks
Oh, really?
use the same ball and socket. So if you want, it has these little teeth going around it so it can't spin while it's connected.
That's clever.
But if you want to have this mask piece function as armor or whatever, you can connect that there. And you can also take this same armor socket, and if you just want to connect another limb to that, that
Yeah.
works fine. That works great.
Oh, this is
Um,
great. I
so
love
the
this.
only because when I was looking at the Toamata, I was looking at this and thinking, what can I change? What can I improve? I know Bionicle fans are a little iffy about me. I feel like me using the term
But
improve
we know
might
what you
be an
mean.
issue for some people. Um, but what can I iterate?
Yeah.
We'll do that because to be clear, I love the Toamata, but there's four unique connections
Mhm.
on the Toamata. Um, and like that's fine, that's cool. It worked well for them. Um, but there was a part of me that thought, what if everything could just connect to everything else super smoothly, super easily? And as someone who has, because I designed the figures, I then printed them all out, and how I made like the combination models was just I had all the pieces
Mhm.
out in front of me and I just started building. It's a very fluid system.
Yeah.
It's a lot, I would go as far as to say it's a lot more fluid than the competitors to be able to just connect anything to anything else. So,
Offers so much freedom and creativity. And I will say, because I did admire not only the effort that went into designing some of the combinations, but the combinations themselves. And although I'm terrible with names, I do recall seeing and going over the kind of centaur like character, noticing the color
this
scheme on
was one
it.
of my favorites.
Yeah, the color scheme on it too, being a classic black, brown, red, as seen in the
Mhm.
Mata, days. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know.
That wasn't. I'm actually that's thank you for pointing that out.
It
I
just
hadn't
it
noticed that.
feels so, and more so, very specifically, it is the same combination as like the McDonald's Matoran, these little guys, color schemes.
Mhm.
So always was fascinating to me that they had some of them in secondary colors, some primary colors. Wish we got more. I I've said it a million times. I'm going to just speak it out into the ether, and if anybody hears it, if Lego ever wanted to bring back Bionicle for like a 25th anniversary, just like a one wave, it's like blind bags of these would be neat.
That would be really cool. I will say Maku is my least favorite just because she has the same colors
Yeah,
as Golly.
I've
I really,
revamped her in the past to make her dark blue in my head, or dark azure if she wants
mhm.
to be. Just give her something different.
Yeah, like I don't get why they didn't just give her dark blue or do Holly, who has dark blue.
I could be wrong about this, but I think dark blue wasn't developed until 2002. So they may not have had access to a darker blue shade at the time. Now, Lego has like 35 blue shades. But back then there was only
a lot.
Lots of blue. Oh yeah. A handful of green, a handful of red, couple of purple. Lots of blue.
Give us a dark red Mictoran.
Yeah.
That would be so fun.
I would have loved it. Any re-release of that concept. I don't know if you've seen it, and I'll send you a link to this video. I took the concept of what made the McDonald's Matoran what they were and applied it to the Borak sets from 2002, creating a Mick Borak, essentially. It's a very simple thing because it only introduces one new piece, the body. But as the Matoran had discs to throw, the Borak have their shields, you know? So I figured the Mick Borak could just shoot the shields, and that's your collectible. You get a shield, you get a windscreen that's a different color. And since those are basically the pieces that change color between Borak, if you just get one of these Mick Borak or whatever, you essentially can pair it with your Borak, and now you have two different color choices. Simple concept.
Is that shield you just showed? Is that 3D printed? Where did we get it?
No, this is a resin cast that I did. It was just the only one I had next to me. I've got a couple over here, including a somewhat trying to be neon green, but not quite. It's a hard color to match. And I have a trans pink one that's just out of reach, but it's a lovely piece.
Clear is hard with resin because it looks different before it cures.
Yeah, so and I wanted to make sure it could fluoresce too. So I was able to create some pieces that fluoresced, but not quite matching what Lego is doing. I don't know what chemicals they use with their fluorescence. They're very stingy on that information. But
they are.
They looked cool.
One other thing, another kind of tribute, because a lot of what I'm looking at for bonus stuff, and so I do eventually want to get a little less reliant on the nostalgia. So like, you know, my Kickstarter exclusive figure the colorway matches someone pretty well.
Couldn't say who.
That total coincidence, definitely. But that definitely matches someone. And that's probably the most like in your face as a tribute you're gonna get from Modieval. One thing that I am thinking that is a little more of a tribute would be armor packs. So blind packs where you would probably get a mask. Who blind packs a mask? That's a very new idea.
Never heard of that one either.
No, never.
I'm all for it.
And some armor to match it, because I wouldn't want you to get a mask that you wouldn't be able to do anything with. So the idea would more than just changing the masks on the characters be, you know, you get this mask, you get the armor that matches it, so that let's say you have Jace, who you can kind of see back there, who's blue, and then you open this pack and you get kind of Oler's armor in this other color. You could put it on there, and it's not just one piece that's out of place. You could put them all on there. That's one thing I'm working on. In the story, I'm definitely going to stay away from masks being important or being powerful. I'm all for powerful swords and axes and stuff like that. But I definitely want less focus on masks in Modieval.
I understand. And I think that might be one of the other reasons why your project sticks out to me so much, is because the nostalgia is there, the homage is there, but it's not in your face. It's not copying anything from before. Obviously, as you mentioned with like the Kickstarter thing, even though yes, it definitely has the vague semblance of a familiar character, it is its own thing. All of the pieces custom designed, the connections by you, the build scheme in and of itself. So it is an homage and nothing more. And I think that there's something very just important about that. because it's not worth, like I said, overstating just how different it is from other projects I've seen people work on, where they work within Lego's system or they go completely away from it. And if they try to lean into the nostalgia, oftentimes I see a sort of alienation of some kind of aspect of the community. Not always intentional, usually not intentional, and sometimes because, lawsuits are a thing, so they don't want the similarities there in the first place. I think with you, one of the things that inspires me so much is that you're open about this is my voice. This is an inspiration of mine. This is me reliving something from my own childhood, because I feel like that's the drive that kind of drove the original design back in 2001. The creators, out of desperation, wanted to create something not necessarily that would have been successful, clearly it was, but that they wanted to see, creating something they fell in love with. You hear stories from Faber, you hear stories from other designers in the early years of Bionicle, just how much it meant to them. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was so successful, because we, as the buyers, saw in our products, in what we bought, the care that went into them. I've got a little deep dive series on the channel where I talk about just so much of the design philosophy behind especially early sets. At some point in time, Lego had to go away from that because it's not easy to work on. It's hard to make a system that forever remains in the zeitgeist, forever remains popular. But Bionicle only ever had to be popular once to be successul, to save Lego, and that's kind of what it did. After that, it could just coast, and it did. It did good.
Kind of talking about that. Another, I don't know, little bit of advice for creative people. I feel weird giving advice because who the hell am I? I just graduated college. But whenever you're going in to make anything, whether you're inspired by something else, you got to remember that, like, George Lucas didn't know he was making the biggest film franchise ever.
Yeah.
You know why Stan Lee has such a weird name? It's because it's not his name. It's because he was embarrassed by his job. His name is Stanley Martin Lieber, I think. I might be a little wrong about that, but
I think you're close, yeah.
He didn't want to put his name on these comic books that are now the biggest franchise ever.
Yeah.
Because it was his job. So don't go that far. Don't go into it being like, I don't want to be known for this. But you got to realize, like, George Lucas wasn't trying to do anything but his vision. And he ended up with Star Wars. And yeah, it was inspired by Flash Gordon, and it was inspired by all this stuff.
Everything that was going on at the time.
Exactly. But every just story that's been told that has been remembered for all this time, when the person writing it was writing it, they didn't know that it was going to be remembered 30 years from now. They didn't know it was going to be remembered 100 years from now.
Yeah.
They were writing what spoke to them and what they thought would speak to other people. So,
and I think that's almost a fleeting thing these days. With access to the internet where anything could go viral at any time, we often think that when someone creates something that they know there's virality in it, that there's this formula to follow. But that's, though sometimes the case for corporate reasons, rarely ever the case by single creators, by individuals or just a small team of indie developers out there. Many of them aren't doing this because they want to make $1 million or because they want the next big thing. They're doing it because, hot damn, they love what they're doing. They've got a passion for it. The passion drives so much of the future, whereas the corporatism oftentimes creates a product that can be devoid of, well, what your product has: passion, love, care that goes into it.
Well, I appreciate those kind words. And I mean, I guess to some level, this project is kind of speaks to what I was saying, in that, like, this wasn't the entirety that I was making this. I was not thinking this was going to be a Kickstarter.
Mhm.
I was never once thinking this was going to be sold to anyone, and I didn't think anyone would see it outside of people who are looking at my portfolio looking for a designer. So I was trying to make something as my capstone project that would people would see it and people would be like, okay, this is who Ian is. This is what Ian can do. This is what Ian wants to make. Um, and there wasn't a part of me that was like, is this going to be profitable? Is this going to sell? Are people going to care about this? And I think now that I'm surprised that it's resonating with people. I feel like whenever you make something, it's hard to tell what you've got.
Yeah.
Like this was 5 months of my life developing this. So whenever I look at it, I think it sucks. Because I look at it now and I'm like, oh, I could have done this better. I wish I'd done this.
I think
I wish I
the biggest compliment I could give to you too is that you've basically created, and I don't mean this in a way to put your project down because clearly you can tell I enjoy it. You've rewritten Lego's idea of CCBS in a way that doesn't feel like CCBS, that doesn't look like CCBS. You've recognized something that has sort of hybridized the ideals of your childhood and the nostalgia that it's built on, the franchises that you grew up around, while also taking, whether intentionally or not, an idea that Lego had that purely on their own side was often thwarted by its own, again, corporatism. I think one of the big failings about CCBS from Lego was just the lack of passion that was in it and how it was very easy to produce for them because once they had the molds out, well, they just had to reprint. And that's fine. But it's good to do it with support and it's good to do it with passion. And that's what I'm seeing coming from you is that your pieces, while interchangeable in a way that they should be, are different, are supporting each other. A similar aesthetic is built within each of them. They feel like a cohesive system. And it's a system of bones that builds a character rather than a system of bones that builds something with the name of a character shoehorned in. I don't know how else to phrase that better. There's just
so
go ahead.
I'm gonna say no comment to any relation between my product and CCBS. And then I'm gonna tell a completely unrelated story. Okay? This is completely unrelated to anything that's come before this. When I was starting this project, and I had a rough idea of how these are going to look and how these are going to fit together, one of the first things they teach you how to do in product design school is patent searches. So I flipped through 500 something. I don't even remember the number. It was like 2 days of me flipping through patents that are owned by the Lego Group and are used by the Lego Group, just to make sure that what I had in mind would not conflict with anything. And there was one specific patent that I don't think conflicts. I think because of how technical they had to be with it, that I'm fine. And it may or may not be a patent for CCBS. It that
Well,
but
for what I can see, that's the aspect that I love so much about it is that it's both proprietary and compatible. That it's both a complete creation from your head, from your software, from your printer, and yet again, the homage, the nods are there. It's all right in front of us. We can see it. It's gorgeous.
so talking about CCBS, as kind of mentioned, I know Gen 2 of Bionicle is not it's a little more controversial than a lot of the other stuff. I know that some people like it, some people don't. I personally I like Gen 2. I don't like it as much.
I'm
But
in
I
the
think they
same
did a
boat.
lot of I think that a lot of Gen 2 is really great. Have you ever built Gen 2 Makuta?
I have not. I have seen his pictures. I've just never really set aside the time to make him.
So I have that's the only Gen 2 model I still have like built. Um, and it's an amazing model. It is possibly it's definitely a little like of a cluster F. I don't know how vulgar you are in the channel.
Totally
Uh,
fine.
but I think it's better than a lot of Gen 1 Titans. I think I think it's really great. But when I was looking at what's come before and what this is inspired by, one thing I saw is, and it was more of a thing in Hero Factory, is that there were characters that like would have armor up here, but like nothing on their lowest arm section, or
Hmm.
they'd have some pieces that don't have armor on them, and it just didn't work. And I get what they were trying to do. I
Yeah.
get that they were like wanting to have this piece that like his lower arm is thinner than the rest of them. That makes sense. That's human anatomy. Um, and so there was a part of me that like when I was like, if you look at this arm, like this bottom part, it doesn't have armor on it. And so I did try to design these. One of my main things when designing the limb pieces was that I wanted it to work without any armor on it. And then when you put a piece of armor on it, it can transform whatever design is already on there and add to it. And that's not only allows for creativity from you guys, from the user, but it also is a very producible product in that now, let's say I have 3 limb sections and 3 armors, that's a bunch more designs. I can't do that math super quickly,
Yeah, like
but
I don't know, 9 or so combinations, something like that.
yeah, that's like 9. Now I feel bad. I feel bad I couldn't come up with the number
I don't
9
know.
because
Hey, I don't know if that's the right one.
I think
I just
you're
said it.
right. I think you're right. And now I feel like people in the comments are gonna be like, he graduated college and he couldn't do 3 times 3.
Yeah, guys, he graduated college, couldn't do it. It's just gonna log off, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. The school system's going downhill, guys. It really is. Uh,
No comment.
but yeah, if you have anything else you want to talk about,
I can't think of too much else. You've been very patient with your time and you've been very generous with it. So I definitely want to say thank you very much for showcasing your models, showcasing that castle, which is still blowing my mind right now. I'd seen pictures of it, but I did not know anything about the side connections. That's just it's the little things sometimes. I
if
will
we
say,
ever,
go ahead.
if this community gets big enough that I can maybe order 10,000 of a figure, maybe we can have canisters. Um, canisters are something I would love to do. Um, and yeah, I'd love to be able to put that castle canister system out there. So
I think it's
castle
fantastic.
canister building system, CCBS.
We did it. It's all come full circle. I will say
Exactly.
too, before we end this one off, if you want to go ahead and plug any sort of sites or social media that you have, now would be a good time to do so. And if you want to shout anybody out, you're more than welcome to as well.
Uh, okay. So for my stuff, if you are purely interested in Modieval from me, that's fine. I respect it. It has its own dedicated Instagram account at Modieval_toys. If you're interested in just my design work in general, uh, I'm on Instagram as Lazy Robots. You can also find my portfolio website if you're interested in seeing in-depth looks at some more of my work at lazyrobotsdesign.com. Um, I'm an industrial designer who is currently looking for work. So if you
If you
are
know somebody,
hiring, if you know somebody, let me know. All business inquiries, whether you're interested in some kind of collab for this or anything else, I'm available. My email is ian@lazyrobotsdesign.com. And then shout outs to previously mentioned Brandon from 9 to 5 Warriors, Matt from Premium DNA, and Aaron from Super 7. Shout out to Andy, who is, he came to Toy Fair with me, one of my best friends, and was always available to shoot ideas off of when I was working on this. Also has his own really great capstone project that if you're into retro inspired toys, you can find on his stuff. I think it's like Andy Makes Stuff. And finally, my wonderful, amazing partner, girlfriend, Haley, for always supporting me and being there to also bounce ideas off of and just help wherever I need it. So
Well, wave to all of them for me, and hopefully this does well. Hopefully we get some of your projects out there, and if I even drive one person to your Kickstarter, I guess you owe me money. No, I'm joking. Actually, no, I'm very happy to have had you on here. I've really enjoyed our time together as well, and I just want to say, man, you got it. I really love what I am seeing here. I love the personality that's behind the figures, the face behind the figures, and yeah, I've just had a wonderful time. Nice, it's a very nice face. It's a lovely face. 10 out of 10. I will definitely say, if you need any sort of information or bounce anything off of, or if I can just help anything along the way as best I can, of course, then yeah, just let me know. Feel free to reach out to me anytime on Discord. That also applies to the audience as well. I do leave my information, my DMs and things open on Discord to the best of my ability. You can also find me on Instagram and Patreon. That's all linked in the description below. And I will link Mr. Ian's Modieval Toys and whatever links he would like me to link down in the description below as well. If you enjoyed the interview, feel free to subscribe. And yeah, let's get Ian into the atmosphere. Let's kick his projects onto the markets, man. All right. I enjoyed your time. I'll go ahead and let you go now. Take care.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.